Hello, I'm Chikara, and did you know that Fanta looks different inside the European Union than it does look outside? This is something that shocks a lot of people when they first see it, including myself, because I only found this out because I tweeted saying, hey, which colour is your Fanta? You know, like, is it this one or is it this one? And which country do you live in? And I started to realise, like, oh, anyone who lives in an EU member state knows that it's yellow. This is the Fanta they're used to, whereas anyone who lives outside the EU, even states like, for instance, Turkey, which is quite close to Europe, are like, oh yeah, it's orange. Of course, it's Fanta orange. I mean, there's an orange fruit in there. Why would the color not be this really strong orange as opposed to this really weak yellow? And it's something that's so interesting because I think most people assume products are just international, right? Or people assume they're different by country, but the truth tends to be there is one product for the EU, and although they might have different products for different continents, there usually is this big split between inside Europe and outside Europe. And I figured, why not take advantage of the fact that I've traveled a fair amount in the past few years, as you all do know if you've watched this channel for a while, and talk about some drinks which I've, tried outside of Europe, which are not available here at all. I've never seen a proper way to get them here, and I figured why not talk about, because we could take this two ways. One is like, here are some great drinks you can't find in Europe. I sure do miss this Fanta. Or why not take it the other way and be like a bitter person who doesn't have a thing and be like, well, it's terrible anyway, we don't have it and therefore it sucks. And that's what we're doing in today's video. So I'm going to start with the worst drink of them all, because this is one I tried this morning. It was kind of the impetus of the video, because I went to Japan recently. Oh, did you know? Wow, it's not like I've posted any videos, but I was in Japan recently, and one of the fascinating things about grocery stores there, Family Mart, 7-Eleven, is they all have sections filled with mini energy drinks, like extra strength, and other like hangover cures or, like vitamin drinks. They're designed for, oh, I'm hungover, I need to just get in mood for the day, because, they work very hard, and that's why drinks like this exist. So this one is called Bukhan No Chikara. It's got a lot of kanji on there too, and it's a mix of an energy drink and a health drink. Again, that's the logical evolution of like, oh yeah, energy drinks, health drinks in the same section. What if there was an energy health drink this size? And I guess I'll taste it just for the sake of this video. It smells minty, like, super medicinal, but like lemony blackcurrant, where you don't taste the blackcurrant, it's just there to cover up the fact that it's like a very strong mentholy kind of taste, I would describe it as. It's like menthol mixed with cough syrup. It's meant to be vitamin filled, and I'm sure someone gets that from this. I get you probably are meant to chug this in the morning, be like, oh man, I feel so bad, and then that bad feeling puts you in the mood for the day, but it's terrible. And I just couldn't believe this morning that, like, really? You sell a drink that tastes like this? In case you're curious, it's turmeric flavored, if I'm not mistaken. That's what that's meant to be, or orange and turmeric. It's got some really weird things in there, but it looks a tiny bit to me like it's meant to be a poop, because it's brown, and I've seen a lot of weird Japanese drinks, and I'm glad we don't have them here, because honestly, I'll drink an energy drink, I'll have a health drink. I'm never in the mood where I'm like, energy, health. I need both energy, caffeine for the day. Also, I need smoothies and other things to make me go, no, I'll have one at a time, thank you very much. Screw you, Japan and your Bukhan No Chikara. They have some really good energy drinks otherwise, but this is one I'm glad we can't find here. You can actually, it costs like $4.99 if you order it online, but I import it from Japan. It's a whole thing. You don't get it in the EU is my point, unless you smuggle it in your luggage. Speaking of smuggling things in my luggage, I went through a lot of effort when I was in New Zealand recently to bring home Bundaberg. So this is, it says Australia owned, and I think I saw this in Hong Kong too. I could be mistaken on that, but this is a drink I've only ever seen in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's really interesting to me because it's called Bundaberg Sarsaparilla. I've tried a few flavors, I like a lot of them, but this is one of the most terrible things on the planet. So again, it's super interesting in that, like, oh yeah, look, it's a glass bottle, a really interesting form factor, like they clearly make their own bottles. I love everything about the idea of this. Oh, my light is shining right on these bottles. I planned this video very poorly, you can tell, but this is Bundaberg Sarsaparilla, and it tastes like sarsaparilla, a flavor I didn't even know until I tried this, where it's like, oh yeah, that's a bit like a ginger beer. Honestly, I kind of like this off the last one. It's like, oh, it doesn't taste like cough medicine mixed with like mint. Oh, how great. It's good compared to that, but there's just a bitterness flavor. It's like drinking a beer, except none of the benefits of drinking a beer. It's super weird, it's super terrible. I don't entirely understand the point, but it's really popular, and it's also quite expensive. Like, I want to say they're a couple Australian/New Zealand dollars a bottle, right? Like, they're quite expensive things, and they're not found in Europe. Although these, wait, there is one of them. I think it's root beer, now exists inside Europe sometimes. I saw it in my foreign food section recently. But besides that, these are rare Australian treats that you find in the Southern Hemisphere. And they're not that good. There's a reason we haven't imported them to Europe yet. Speaking of things we haven't imported to Europe yet, here's something really interesting to me because this is Supreme Oolong Tea. If you want me to be honest with this, I think I was in a lounge in Hong Kong and I was like, well, I'm about to go on a flight. I need to maximize my bag space, and grabbed a few drinks from the fridge there because I wanted to take some things back. And the weirdest thing to me was Supreme Oolong Tea. It's a 0-calorie drink that's tea but cold in a can. And the thing that annoyed me about this is it's 340 milliliters. So to show you that, every can here is 330, if I'm not mistaken. It might be like 335 in America, but it's like a really specific amount. They added 5 more milliliters, which means they must make their own cans, or they're just lying, or they're lying and they just figured, let's round that up. I'm not sure which, but that's annoying. And let me open this and just show you what it's... Actually, wait, before I open it, let me show you something fascinating. On the top here, despite being manufactured in... Wait, I'll show you on the side here. It said manufactured in, like, Taiwan, distributed by... Oh, this sucks. But this is made in Taiwan. I hope you can see that somewhere on there. And despite that fact, it says on the top here very clearly, CA cash refundable, as well as, like, OR, and then MI 10 cents. Basically, despite being made in Taiwan, and despite me consuming it in Hong Kong, this is a can destined for the US, or, like, every can has that writing on there. And that goes to show a really interesting thing, so I'll try it and just show you how terrible it is. It tastes like bad water. It tastes like, you know when you see a brown puddle in Africa and you're like, oh, really? They walk 10 miles and they drink that? Ah, like, either walk 10 miles or have muddy water. When you're doing both, that's when you know we need to dig them a well. Like, you know, the things you see in the adverts, like, oh yeah, that sure sucks. This tastes how you imagine that puddle water does. Like, maybe with a tiny hint of, like, cereal was in this... No, wait, Weetabix was in this water maybe 6 months ago. And it's like, oh, you can taste, like... Yeah, the tiniest bit of, like, grain or something all the way out there. Like, it was a long time ago that the Weetabix touched this. Weetabix is a British thing, I think. But, you know, wheat biscuits, I know. But, like, you can taste where there was some flavor, but there isn't anymore. But the thing I find interesting about this is that there's this thing, it's a big effect where when either the EU or the US regulates something, those are such huge markets for any company that exports to those countries that they'll often just adapt those regulations worldwide. A big example of this, for instance, is Philip Morris has their packaging, you know, their cigarette packaging. It has the warnings all over the world, even in countries where that's not required. You know, like this is your lung on cigarettes, just because it's easier to have one processing method, which is also why if you live in the US, you might see websites being like, hey, do you want cookies from us? Because they don't bother having a US and an EU version, or a EU and a worldwide version. They're just like, sure, we'll follow. It's called the Brussels effect, I think, but it's super interesting. And the US has this effect as well, and it's just, this is terrible. I don't understand the point of this. The ingredients are literally, sorry, the ingredients are literally water, oolong tea, and vitamin C, and it just doesn't taste like anything. If you're meant to sweeten it, then it's just like, why not throw water with some sweetener if that's your thing? It's terrible. I don't like it. But you know what else I don't like? This right here. It's by E-Gills. Look at that. Top. Oh, it's upside down. E-Gills. And this is an Icelandic malt appelsin. So, yeah, this is, Iceland's a country of about 200,000 people. So, you might recognize some of the drinks here, but this is the Vegas drink that no one's ever recognized in my fridge. All of these drinks have been in my fridge since I got them, like, a year ago, by the way. But, yeah, this is a drink no one ever recognizes. They're like, what? What even is that? It just looks like a weird novelty bottle. But this is a really popular Icelandic Christmas drink. So, in Iceland, they have two very popular drinks. One is called, if I'm not mistaken, an E-Gills malt, and one is called appelsin. Appelsin's just an orange. It might as well be this. It's the same color, it's the same everything. Whereas the malt E-Gills is a mildly alcoholic, like 1% drink, that's like flavored like beer a little bit and very sweet. It's strange stuff. I actually didn't hate it as much as you'd figure. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open this bottle. It's been like a year and a half since I was in Iceland, so I haven't tried this in forever. Oh, that's really good, actually. Wait. It's really, really, really good. And then the aftertaste... Imagine like a Fanta, but with so much more sweetness and depth to the flavor, like... It's like a Fanta mixed with like a fun lemonade, mixed with like all the fun fruity flavors, all mixed in there like, oh, this is good. Like a sherbet in there as well. So many fun, exciting flavors. And then just as you've fallen in love with the flavor, you're like, oh, this is really good. And then at the end, it finishes with a beer taste. That's right, it's malt. It's the same thing as beer. It has a beer taste mixed with Fanta, and it actually works. Like, I could see how this is a Christmas drink in Iceland. I really like it. Like, there was a reason I bought a bottle back. But at the same time, it's like, this is so calorie. Like, this bottle does 180 calories, apparently. And also, it has a beer aftertaste, so all of the fun flavor. There's such a delightful mix. It's like, oh, and then it's beer. You know when you drink beer and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a bitter part of my tongue. I don't like bitter. I don't like beer. Fun fact for you right there. And this is just a terrible mix of both those things. Not a big fan. Not a big fan at all. Actually, you know, every other taste I'm going from this is amazing to that's awful. It's such a depth flavor. Like, you can sit there and you can just absorb it and get 5 different tastes. And I like that a lot about it. And yeah, it's meant for Icelandic Christmas. Fun fact with Toy Cat right there. Yeah, if you go to Iceland, get one of these. But I don't want it in the UK because, again, I drank like a third of a bottle. Actually, not even that, like, from there to there in a bottle this big. So, yeah, that's enough for me. But if you go to Iceland, pick one up, I guess. But yeah, the final example here is this Fanta right here, which is the best drink on this list. Like, so all these other drinks, it's like, oh yeah, these are terrible. Glad we don't have these in the EU. But let me talk about Fanta, right? Because I love this. It's so flavor-filled. So, just to give you a full comparison here, I should have tried this one first. I would have enjoyed that more. This is going to taste sad now. So, EU Fanta actually tastes a lot sadder than non-EU Fanta. Yeah, that was like squash that was a little bit bubbly. Whereas this, oh, I'm going back for the, this is just like, it's so full on. Like, I bet my tongue's orange. Like, I'd be willing, is it? I don't even know, but I'd be willing to bet that it is. But yeah, so the interesting difference here is that Fanta inside the EU, there is sugar limits and I don't even think they're like mandated by law, but there's like sugar taxes. Basically, there's a whole bunch of reasons to bring down the sugar content. And that's good for public health. That's even good for like individual health. Like, this is my baseline drink. As long as I haven't tried this in the last, like, you know, week or so, this tastes good to me. This is just normal drink. Go out and drink it, even less calories, because it's got like a mix of sugar and aspartame. It's actually pretty good. This whole bottle is 96 calories, this whole bottle. 500 mils. This 300 ml bottle has 160. So to put that in perspective, that's like 1.6 times for 2/3 the size. You get the point. This is more than double the calories per 100 milliliters or whatever. And maybe like, so calories aren't everything, Toy Cat. That's a weird thing. But the interesting thing about this is I'm actually glad this exists, because if I lived in a world where, because again, I'm just complimenting the drink. Why am I glad this doesn't exist in Europe? And the reason is because even though I love it, the thing is, if there's gonna be two worlds, a world where there's some really bad drinks and a world where there's really good drinks, you want to live in the world where there's bad drinks, because your taste profile does adapt. Like, I love sugar so much. I have a sweet tooth. That's why I love Japan. That's why I love America and their crazy drinks. I have a sweet tooth that is unsatiable. I swear to God. However, your taste bud can adapt. It's a thing you never believe because it sounds silly because there's a bad period, but your taste buds adapt. This is what I'm used to. This is much better for me. I can drink a much higher quantity of it. However, it means when I travel abroad to America, Japan, etc., everything tastes good. Everything is full on and amazing. Whereas imagine the reverse. If this is what you just get used to, this is your baseline, this just tastes, again, like I just tried it right now. This tastes like sugary squash, cordial if you, I don't know if squash and cordial are common outside the UK. But, you know, this just tastes like that. It's awful. It's weak. It's flavorless. So wouldn't you rather live in the world where you could go everywhere else and have the benefit? I think there's sometimes about rich countries versus poor countries. Like, on the one hand, living in a rich country, like, oh no, when I travel overseas, there are countries that, like, you know, some international airports for the major airport in a country look like slums, and you might get, you know, they look really rough is what I'm trying to say here. And that sounds real bad. Like, oh no, there are so many countries that I just feel uncomfortable going to because, you know, crime rate, this, that, etc. But wouldn't you rather live in the better country, like, for the day-to-day use? Or to think about it this way, like, so when you go to Switzerland, you think, man, it must suck living in Switzerland. Everything's so expensive there. But imagine living in Switzerland and traveling to the rest of the world, because you earn a Swiss wage, or Norway's the same. You earn a Norwegian wage, and then you go to the rest of the world and no one else is. It's the same thing as the joke of like, oh yeah, when you go to, like Ethiopia, oh yeah, well they earn like $5 a day, so you throw $10 at them and they're amazed. And, therefore you get to be a king on $100. Like, the jokes you get to make about currency conversions, that's actually true for Swiss people and your country, assuming you're not Swiss. Hello, Swiss people. But yeah, wouldn't you rather live in the country where, living there is normal and living everywhere else is amazing, versus living in the country where living there is normal and the rest of the world is expensive or tastes bad? And that's why I'm glad this is the case, because this, again, I'm personally not one of those people who's like, oh, aspartame might cause cancer. Yeah, literally breathing oxygen might cause cancer. Like, you can label everything as carcinogenic if you really want to, but what we do know is that sugar causes way more problems than just theoretical potential mildly increased risks of cancer. So like, given the choice, go for a bit more aspartame mixed in there, go for the public health case, it's 100 times sweeter. Of course it's going to be better for you. Like, I don't understand people who are just like permanently against something just because they heard something once. So like in this case, like, yeah, get used to the slightly less good tasting flavor, and then every time you go anywhere, it tastes amazing. And yeah, these drinks, I'm glad we don't have them in Europe. These two because they taste nothing or worse than nothing. This because it's cool and like I kind of like the idea, but it's also expensive. This is because it's enjoyable to try, and then you never want any more, and then you mildly regret it because, again, it's like so bad for you and doesn't taste good enough to justify it. And then this is because of the philosophical debate about what normal is. A lot of people get really used to the status quo, and then they forget that the status quo is something that can always be raised or lower. A lot of people think that like, oh, well, kids are suffering in Africa, so you can't suffer. No, it's all about your baseline, right? Like, just because you're a billionaire, for instance, this is a big debate, like, it doesn't mean you can't suffer a huge emotional tragedy. That's a separate thing. Like, a financial worry or any one of these worries, it's all about where they go from here. People can live rich and not realize it their whole lives. People can live poor and feel like they're as rich as they need to be their whole lives, because it's about your baseline and how much you improve from that every day. If you improve your life by 1% every day forever, you'll live amazing. If if your life goes down 1% every year, that's going to feel terrible the whole way down, no matter how low you go, because life is about relative improvements and relative downgrades. And I don't know, maybe this video about terrible non-European drinks made you realize that. If it didn't, then I hope you'll enjoy it anyway. As always, second channel, don't care. Goodbye.